Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 202, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/202. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction, and you can get the video right here wherever you're watching it. But you can also get it on YouTube, X, Odyssey, and Rumble. Make sure you're following us on all, especially for your YouTube only people, because we are currently, you may have missed us last week. That's because we've got another ban, another 1 week ban. And what did we do, David? What was our crime this time?
I have no fucking idea. I don't know what we did.
I think it was episode 195. And what we did is we shared a clip of Robert Redfield, the former director of the CDC, on Chris Cuomo's show. And Redfield was laying out, I'm not going to get into the specifics. I'm not going there, YouTube. Okay? But Redfield was explaining a few of his personal disagreements with the God of Science and the former agency that the God of Science ran in the U.S. government. And we played that clip, and apparently that was a no-no for YouTube. You're not allowed to let them say what they say in their own words or point out that there's disagreement amongst the intelligentsia.
I believe they said it was medical misinformation, despite
Correct.
the fact that we didn't discuss any medical procedures whatsoever.
No.
And only reacted to the video.
So apparently now, Robert Redfield, again, former director of the CDC, is a purveyor of medical misinformation because we just let him speak in his own words. Yes, we had our own comments about it, but again, so now we've gotten strikes for sharing articles from Yahoo. Okay. Not even like, some Breitbart, whatever, pick your, favorite portion of the dark web that you're scared of, that you're not allowed to share articles from. No, from like mainstream sources like Yahoo, MSN, we've gotten strikes for that. And now we've gotten strikes for sharing in their own words, people of the medical establishment here in the United States. So I say all that to say this, YouTube people. We're on thin ice.
What do you want? I feel like we're in The Notebook. What do you want? What do you want us to do?
Sorry. Sorry, not YouTube people, the ones rolling. I'm talking about our people who only see us on YouTube. We might not be long for the YouTube world. Okay. We were banned from posting anything last week. So we're getting caught up on that. And we're now on a 90-day thin ice period. Again, this is like our fourth time of being on 90 days. We keep keeping our head under the radar for 90 days, and then we come.
Well,
we surface
in fairness, we did get to go all the way back to square one. So that's where we started.
No, yeah, we do. Yeah, if we don't get it again every 90 days, we just recycle. That's how we've. That's how we're just guessing on around this thing.
Right, we are just guessing on what we can and can't say now because God only knows. I feel like we're back in 1990 and like. A man can never be a woman. I think we are pretty safe to say. I might not know much in this crazy mixed up world. Right, exactly. 2024, you're out of here. You hate speech, son of a bitch.
So where we stand today is obviously you can see this now, so you know that we're allowed to post on YouTube this week.
Hope.
But for 90 days, for 3 months, we can't get in trouble again, or else we get our second strike. And if we get a third strike within that 90 days, we are permabanned from YouTube for life. So.
Or at least this email addresses.
Yeah. If getting strikes for something as simple as sharing them in their own words is happening to us, your guess is as good as mine for what our next strike is going to be for. So make sure to follow us on Rumble, X, and Odyssey, where they continue to allow us to speak like adults. Because if you wake up one Saturday morning thinking, oh, I missed my WMD boys last night, you go over to YouTube and we're not there, you'll be able to find us at all those other places. So,
well, that's neat.
That's the PSA for this episode.
And I have a quiet moment of reflection for us and the memes. As you well know, I'm a big Shark Week fan, and I've been dabbling in the week of Sharkdom for quite some time now, since I was pretty young. And I think this year they actually literally jumped the shark, like not like what they've been doing for 10 years of just like recording great whites jumping out of the water with seals in the mouths. That's epic, and keep doing that. But I was watching it, and Dane, I'm almost ashamed to say that I didn't turn the TV off right away. I went and did other things, but there was an episode of Shark Week called Big Shark Energy. Go ahead.
Did they have like, you know how they send those research crews out on the boats?
Mm-hmm.
Did they have an all-female crew?
No.
Is that what it was?
Oh, okay. It's worse than that day.
All right. Go ahead.
It's worse than that. It's worse. So the whole point of the program was that they were just going to see like how a male displays his dominance and displays his alphaness and
toxic masculinity.
And yeah, I thought it would just be banned right away, or at least YouTube would strike it at least. But no. So I get through the first part. It's like all about predation and how they attack things and how explosive they are. And I was like, well, that's cool. And then it's like, how big are they? It's like, yeah. And then they go, how big are the dicks? And I go, what? And they're like, no, we're going to. Yeah. I was like, wait a second. They're like, we've got this device. I was like, don't do this, please. It was 10 minutes of them just like getting a shark to swim by. And he's like, oh, look at his fucking pecker. Whoa. So Shark Week, I implore you next year, leave the dick measuring out. We're good. We're set. Like, show the teeth, show the attacks, do whatever. No more dick measuring, please. We get enough of that with Trump and Biden anyway. So how long their golf shot is.
Okay, listen, I hear you on all that, but is that really as bad as, being preachy about gender equality and all that kind of stuff?
I didn't say that it was, but I was saying for Shark Week, this is on at 8. And like children watch this program, and you're teaching them
about the kids. I got
it's about the kids, Dane. And they don't need to be young and being worried about their dick size yet. They just need to be worried about like sharks and how cool they are. All right, let's leave their worries and cares, out of it. Let's leave the penises alone.
Listen, that is a concern for the kids, and
I will say though, hold on. They did equate the body length, the whole body length, to the size of the penis. So at least they were being fair about that. I learned a couple of things that I might be able to squeak a couple more centimeters out on myself for. So, or at least brag a little bit better next time I'm in a bar or something like that.
Science.
Okay. You can't beat it. You can't beat it at all. You know what?
As troublesome and problematic as that is for the kids to worry about, us adults have some more important things to worry about. And it's the fact that no matter what you do, no matter who you elect, you always end up with John McCain. Even if you have nothing to do with actually electing that person, because your vote doesn't matter. Yeah.
Even if you're French, you might end up with McCain. You can't even get away from him across country lines.
Yeah. And we have 3 stories from recent memory to kind of really drive this point home about how much, in fact, your vote does not matter. And what we're going to talk about today on today's episode is the stock ban that wasn't. There was some talk, some rumblings, maybe there's going to be a ban on congressional members from trading stocks. A lot of cynicism out there that this thing will actually pass. But even if it does, it will do effectively nothing. Shocker, we know. And then we're also going to talk about the SAVE Act, or if you watch MSNBC, it's the quote-unquote GOP voter ID bill, right? Because that sounds much more nefarious. And how that did not pass because, God forbid, people that vote in U.S. elections have to prove that they're actually allowed to vote in those elections. And we're going to wrap it up with the French elections. And we're going to use France as the foil, but really about this whole how these European countries that want to lecture the United States and lecture the world really about the sanctity of democracy and how they are the beacons of the voice of the people for the world over there in Europe, not really living up to their ideals. And David and I have thoughts, like I said, using the French election, or if you want to call it that, using that as the example. So first and foremost, David, jumping into that stock ban, what's the sit?
Well, didn't you say that anyone caught doing it, anyone caught insider trading, as we know it as citizens of the United States, we go to jail. We go to jail and they make you feel really bad about what you did. They say, you criminal, you fucking criminal, get in there, you monster. How dare you take action upon information that was given to you and you made a profit off of it. You know, like how most other things work. But not in this case. So get in jail. But then, so to play fair, I think was it the Senate that passed it?
Yes, the Senate.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so the Senate goes, you know what? Yeah. It's high time you guys have called us out on it. So you know what? It's high time we do something about it. All right. We're going to meet you halfway. Tell you what, to keep us from insider trading, as you call it, we just call it good business here on Capitol Hill. But to keep us from doing that, tell you what, if we get caught doing it, not the fact that we lied or perjured ourselves by saying that we didn't do it, but if we finally do get caught, we can't deny. Tell you what we'll do. We'll give you 10%. We'll take a 10% reduction on whatever we gained. And that's our gift to you, people.
Yeah. Well, 10% of whatever you get or your congressional salary, whichever is more.
Oh my God. So if they made like $10 million, they just have to give away their one. Oh, fuck me.
No. Whichever's more. Whichever's more.
So they're sitting there going, I can have my cake or I can eat it too, but I can't have cake and eat it too.
Yeah. So in other words, folks, for those of you mathing at home, congressman or woman trades a stock and makes $1 million on it. They will actually only get to put $900,000 in their pockets. Woe is them. Oh. There will be no kicking of them out of Congress, no jailing their brokers or whoever helped facilitate this illegal exchange. None of that.
Not even the Game of Thrones thing where they have to walk down the middle of the aisle and they just go, shame,
yeah.
shame.
That would be nice.
I'd almost say, you know what? That's fine. Fuck it. Yeah. If that's what we're going to get, I'm down with it.
Yeah. Now, like I said at the outset, none of us are delusional enough to think that this thing is actually going to pass, because even if some sort of like token hand gesture of, we'll just give you 10%, they will not even abide that. They will fight tooth and nail to make sure they don't even have to do that. And the whole time they're doing it, this will be them. But, you know, although this is a pretty unifying, you know, we always talk about the division in the United States and everybody talks about it, and rightfully so, usually ginned up by the people complaining about it the most. This is a cohesive issue. This is going to bring the American people together to stop insider trading, because when you look at that list that's published by Unusual Whales over on X, or, you know, any of the other myriad accounts that now do this, it's always, you know, they'll have a blue line for Democrats and red lines for Republicans. It's usually pretty evenly dispersed, you know, Democrats and Republicans that are, you know, making a ton of money off of insider trading. So this is not a left-right thing. This is a, hey, you are elected representatives that are sent to Congress to legislate on our behalf, on the behalf of the American people. Now, notwithstanding the fact that you never actually do that, at a bare minimum, can you not use that privilege to enrich yourself? Like, that's it. Or, we're not even telling you, I mean, David and I are, but most of the American people aren't even telling you to quit feeding the military industrial complex beast or whatever other nonsense you're, you know, sending money to Ukraine. And most American people aren't asking you to do that, but they're just saying, quit getting rich while you're doing it. If you're going to screw us, at least stop getting rich doing it.
Or at least let us do it too. Like, all you have to do is just take down the law that says it's insider trading, and then we're all fucking good. Now it's not a crime anymore. Let's all do it. Let's all get fucking rich, and let's all be Martha Stewart and talk about fucking things with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
You know,
like I said, the cynicism is real. It's justified that this thing probably won't even pass the House. And if it does, you know, sign into law by the president, highly unlikely. But even if it does, for all the patting of themselves on the back that's going on in the Senate about this has some real teeth. When you look into it, what the punishments actually are, it's literally much ado about nothing. So, you know, I guess, you know, round and around we go. Our, you know, completely morally compromised and conflict of interest laden representatives are going to keep doing what they do.
It's almost like they vote to raise themselves every year. Oh, wait, they do that too. Oh, well, that's fucking great. That's just great. They have to hold themselves accountable while they grade their own tests. Okay, yeah, that's great.
pass or no pass, this will be Nancy Pelosi. So on to the SAVE Act, SAVE. And what do David and I always tell you about, these cleverly titled bills that usually whatever they say that they're going to do, they're doing the exact opposite? Well, I guess we'll never know what this one is actually going to accomplish because it died. And what is it, David, and why did it die?
Well, what it was, Dane, was it was a obviously Republican bill, as MSNBC noted it time and time again. Wouldn't even call it by the SAVE Act. It would call it the GOP identification bill, which is what it was. It was just a bill, from what I heard, amongst other things, because, of course, we can't get one issue bills in the House or Senate because they won't allow us to do that, because that's not how Congress and, operates. Because how do you take advantage of the name of a bill if the bill says what it is, and exactly what it does? So anyway, skipping to the main, Brother Maynard. Apparently, all it was asking you to do is present identification when you vote. That's it. That's all. I mean, you have to present identification to get alcohol. You have to present identification to a police officer if he pulls you over. But to vote, no problem. Just come on in. Are you Tom, Dick, or Harry? We'll take your word for it. Just get in there and spread some democracy and just say, fuck yeah to freedom. And if they're going to do that, my whole point is, like, if you don't have to present identification, then obviously you don't have to be a citizen here to be able to vote, is basically what they're insinuating. So why do we keep the vote in our borders anymore, Dane? Why not let everyone vote in our election? Wouldn't that be something? Let China vote in our election. Let's let Russia vote in our election. Isn't that weird that I said those two countries after the last two elections that we've had? Anyway, let's just let everyone vote for who the president of the world should be. Right, Dane?
Yeah. And I mean, that's how all countries that have ever sought to maintain their borders or their, cultural identity. And again, just when I throw out the phrase cultural identity, I can already hear the Rachel Maddows of the world talking about white nationalism and white supremacy and all of that kind of stuff. But again, they will go over to Japan or Korea or India or the Scandinavian countries that they're always so fond of, these highly, highly homogenous societies that are intentionally so. And they will laud them to the world about why they're so great. But yet, if America says, hey, there are some unique defining features about America, not based on race, like some of those other countries are, but based on some of the ideals that, you have inalienable rights that not only can the government not take away from you, you cannot even give them up if you wanted to. That's a pretty novel concept around the rest of the world. And if you want your government to reflect a sort of affinity for and protection of that ideal that protects your individual rights, you might want to have people engaging in elections that understand the history of that whole thought process, where it came from, what the founding of this nation was based upon. Because if they don't, and they just come from anywhere else in the world with their own cultural ideas about what rights the citizen has vis-a-vis its federal government, then they might vote according to that dictate. When an American, and I do this because sometimes, I've in recent years gone to Europe more often and talked with Europeans about some of these things. And one of the main things that I talk about is like, we just don't understand you Americans and your guns. And they
Really?
think about it. They think about it from the concept of, again, and we're going to get into this when we talk about the French elections, is European societies are very centrally directed, right? Paris, Berlin, and London rule France, Germany, and England in a way that Washington, D.C. never can. And it's because of the system of government that the United States has. And so when it's broken down to Europeans in a way that says, well, okay, the reason why the Second Amendment exists, the reason why you have the right to keep and bear arms is not tied to the specific tool, the specific weapon we're talking about is guns. What it's tied to is the inalienable right to self-defense. That the second you take your first breath on that table when you're born in the hospital, you have the right to defend yourself. Now, obviously, as a newborn infant, you don't have much capacity to do it. But if you're a 130-pound female walking through a park in the middle of the night and a 6'5", 350-pound man wants to do something to you against your will, you only have one force threat equalizer available to you in that situation.
Mace.
That is going to allow you to exercise your self-defense.
A whistle.
If you have a gun, right? So when it's thought of in that concept of it's all tied back to you have these inalienable rights, they're not given to you by any decree, by any centralized government or anything like that they are endowed on you by your creator, whether you want to believe in the whole religious side of it or not, it's not really relevant. The point is those rights don't come from man. Because if they do come from man, and if you have that sort of cultural upbringing coming from anywhere else in the world, then you're more susceptible to a politician that says, I'm going to legislate away your right to have a gun, to self-defense. I'm going to legislate away your ability to keep half of your paycheck. I'm going to legislate away your ability to avoid going to war if we want to send you. You know, if a bunch of people flood into the United States that don't have those cultural moorings, don't have that understanding of where rights come from in the American context, then you're going to see your government start to reflect their values much more than the values of America. So, you know, that's a long-winded way of saying me talking about having the culture of America stay intact, being important, has nothing to do with race, and it doesn't need to. But the MSNBCs of the world want to make it about that because they can't respond to what I just said.
It would totally ruin Hollywood. Like, for as much as bitter biscuitry as you hear from Hollywood, we need to get rid of the guns. Like, what's in every single, like 80% of the movies that come out of Hollywood is a shooter or action flick.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are the biggest fucking hypocrites known to man, number one. Number two, have you ever shot a gun? It's kind of fun. It's kind of cool blowing shit up. You ever think about that? No, I bet you didn't. And number three, really more importantly, and look, it goes back to what you were saying, is like, yeah, that's fine. If you think about if you think that the government's going to protect you, it's basically what you're saying. It's like, why do I need a gun when my loving big brother is going to take care of me no matter what? Well, that's cool. Weren't you just saying, especially in this country, I'll only speak to our country, weren't you just saying a couple of years ago to defund the police? And aren't they the ones that are supposed to come and save you when you have a problem? And speaking of the police, do you know what the national average time of a response to a 911 call is, by any chance? And it might differ from state to state. And do you trust yourself if you have a home intruder that intends to do you or your loved ones harm in your house? Do you trust yourself to be able to hold them off with words for whatever that time is, whether it be 8 or 20 minutes? No? Well, then what are you going to do when words don't count anymore and they didn't come there to play fucking mahjong with you? What are you going to do? So, and then to go macro with it, Australia, what are their gun laws like? They don't have many guns over there, right?
Well, they had a shooting 20, 30 years ago, and then they basically bought a bunch of them back and destroyed it. But yes, much less gun-friendly population than here in the U.S.
Correct. And what happened to them during COVID?
Yeah.
The people that didn't get the shots?
Locked in cages en masse.
By who, again? Their own government?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was their government, yeah.
Huh. So, again, I love all these things where, like, we just think it'll never happen again. Oh, that happened in 1940. That's not going to happen now, even though we call each other the same thing that we called the bad guys back then all the time now. We call you a Nazi all the time now. The heuristic of evil that we've grown up with in this society for the past 50 years. Like, okay, so I don't know. It just gets so depressing when you deep it, when you go a little bit below the surface. It's just so obvious. And then if you don't feel comfortable with the gun, at the end of the day, don't get one. But I'll guarantee you one thing: enact all the harsh laws that you want. Chicago, some of the strictest gun laws. New York City, some of the strictest gun laws. California, some of the strictest gun laws. What are the states with the highest amount of gun infractions or cities? Those three cities. I don't know, I named a state at the end, but it's probably LA. But anyway, skipping all that, yeah, sure, give up your guns. But Or if you want to take them away, then none of us will have guns. But who might still have the guns? That's right, the criminals. Because what don't they give a fuck about, Dane?
Laws.
The law?
In general.
They don't give a shit about the law, so they'll get the gun anyway? Like, none of it makes sense when you actually talk about it. But no, we're emotional. And, they just mentioned the latest shooting that happened. Well, the latest shooting that was a shooter that they can talk poorly about.
Right.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. We won't go any deeper on that.
I didn't mean to hijack the SAVE Act discussion and make it all about guns, but that point aside is that if you want to have if you want to have a country at all, especially one that is predicated at least in part on the right of the people to vote and pick who the representatives are, then you're going to want to make sure that those people understand the values and cultural moorings of your country, right? David and I aren't going to be able to go to Japan tomorrow, understand everything that's going on in Japan, and be able to pick a politician reliably that is going to legislate in the interest of native Japanese people, because we don't understand the culture, right? And it's the same thing here. Just because the United States is a multicultural society and does hold that up as one of its, proud accomplishments, vis-a-vis the rest of the world, doesn't mean that you as a country all of a sudden need to cease to exist. And, that's the worst thing. I have this article here from MSNBC of all places. And when they're going through, well, first of all, the title tells you exactly this wasn't the title. The House approved Mike Johnson and Trump's worst brainchild. But I saw another article that said that the SAVE Act is a solution in search of a problem. Essentially, there's no reason to do this. But anyway, this is what MSNBC says. It says that the SAVE Act is intended to overhaul the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. That act mandates that states allow residents to register to vote when applying for a driver's license or other official ID card. Under the SAVE Act, those states would now be forced to require applicants to provide documentary proof that they are a citizen, including a passport, birth certificate at the time they fill out the form. Oh, the humanity. I cannot believe that we would make somebody produce a government document to say that this is why I'm allowed to vote in this country. How dare they? How dare they? To kind of take the thin veneer of bullshit right off the top of it, if you are voting against any sort of step that is even marginally, even if you agreed with MSNBC that there's not any problem with voter fraud and people that aren't supposed to vote voting and all that kind of stuff, even if you believe that, if this is a marginal step, which in their words will not even accomplish anything, but even if it doesn't, if this is a marginal step in the direction of adding certainty, legitimacy, validity to your elections, so that now the next time, the big bad Republicans complain about a fraudulent election, you'll have one more feather in your cap to say, no, it's not possible. We have the SAFE Act that guarantees that everybody who gets a voter ID card had some sort of government documentation to prove that they're entitled to it. So why wouldn't you want even a marginal step closer to a safer, more guaranteed, valid election?
It just there's only
one answer. It's because you've been piping in millions of people who are not allowed to vote, but can under these more lax regulations as they
what have they also been doing,
under the Voter Registration Act.
They've been putting them up in hotels, giving them prepaid debit cards, giving them cell phones, setting them all up.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you feel pretty indebted to the people that did that to you? And wouldn't you kind of want to vote their way? I don't know.
It's not only that, it's this is a kind of stilted analogy, but, fish in a barrel in the sense that, there have been interest groups all throughout American history that, they will literally go and hand you a list on voting day and say, like, look, here's all the candidates that are Democrats, just basically when you go in the booth, check all of these lists and, you'll be good. Democrats do it, Republicans do it, blah, 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 right? Okay. Now you have an entire hotel full of people that any sort of organizer that's going to go in there.
You get a mail-in ballot. You get a mail-in ballot. You all get mail-in ballots.
So they know where these people are to be able to go in there and say, okay, here's all the people you're going to vote for. Now, again,
well, they knew where they were in cages on the border too, so they could have just done that.
Even if they're allowed to do that under the law, I'm supposed to sit here as an American and say, okay, I've spent 30 some odd years in this country. I grew up with Schoolhouse Rock. I got some, you know, baseline level of civics. Basically my civics knowledge all came outside of school. But let's just assume that for purposes of this discussion that, you grew up as an American, you learned about the American Revolution, the American ideals, what this country was founded on, that whole cultural value thing I was talking about just a second ago. And you're making your decisions based on those things. And then somebody who has spent 5 minutes in this country and doesn't know anything about your country or how your government functions or whatever, is just handed a list from a group of people that maybe don't have your best interests in mind, and they just vote down the list and then all of their candidates win. So even if in that situation the results are technically legal, how am I supposed to take any confidence in that my government is not going to turn on me and not put me on a list and all of that other stuff that they brag about all over MSNBC about doing these days? It's not going to make me feel real confident. Might even engender a little bit of animosity. And you do that over enough time, you build that animosity up and you're creating a powder keg of problems. But again, that's what they want because they want the violence to spill over. They want it to turn from rhetoric into reality so that they can justify, stepping down on our necks a little bit harder.
That's not what we're doing. We're just standing up. We're standing up for the little guy. We're just until it's already there. And what do we say all the time? Like once they instate it, it ain't once Pandora's out of the box, it's not going back in. Just ask the fucking 2001 Patriot Act. We're only going to do this for a little bit, just to make sure everyone's safe.
Just the tip, just see how it feels.
Oh, you're on my hair. All right. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So, and Dane, so we brought up all these problems with voter fraud and the general election in America, and we say your vote doesn't matter, but how are they doing in other countries?
Turns out not well.
Oh,
David.
boy. Oh, boy.
Not well.
So this might be a globalist issue.
Yeah. It almost seems like the people in power in countries all over the world, this is not obviously an American phenomenon, but the people in power know, and they can see it because we all have eyeballs, that their policies are absolutely running over the citizens in their country. And as a consequence, as what we're told about democracy, right? Vote the bums out. If their policies are bad, if you're not better off today than you were when they got on office, you just vote them out and you get in people with better ideas, better policies, that kind of stuff.
Lickety split, right?
And, in a vacuum, utopian democracy, if that's the way it worked, it would be a pretty good system. But it almost seems like these regimes around the world that have created strife, not only around the world outside of their own countries, but in particular on their own citizens within their own countries, are doing everything they can to desperately hold on to the power that they so desperately do not deserve. And their citizens are turning against them, right? One example of this would be in the United States would be the election of Donald Trump, right? You're not supposed to vote for him because he wasn't handpicked by the establishment. How dare you?
Deplorables.
Another example would be Brexit over in the UK. You're not supposed to do that, don't you know? The wisest minds all sit in Brussels and they need to legislate for the entire European Union. I'll be damned if what you want to happen in the UK for you. And then you see some of these other more nationalist type parties, the AfD in Germany. You have the national, what was it? Is it the National Assembly in France? Which one was it? What did I say? The National Rally Party, Marie Le Pen's National Rally Party in France. You have the Vox Party in Spain. You have some of these parties that the mainstream media in those countries will say these are far right, these are nationalists, and they're Nazi adjacent and all that kind of stuff. When really what it is it's French people, German people, British people, Spanish people saying, my politicians are kind of screwing me over. And I don't have as bright a future as my parents had because of what these politicians are doing. So I'm going to try to go a different route. I'm going to kind of exit this whole globalist track they want to put us on, and I'm going to elect somebody that is at least saying, in very Trumpian fashion, right? America first. To any extent these other parties exist in these other countries, they are, France first, Spain first, Germany first, UK first. And the people are choosing to vote for them. And the powers that be that have run these people's noses into the ground are not allowing that to happen, despite all of their high ideals about democracy. France is just the most recent example.
Well, at least I will give them credit, Dane. They did not suspend the election like some people that are fighting for democracy did on this globe and make themselves president in perpetuity until said conflict is over. So we'll give them credit there. But what exactly did they do? Because I heard there's 3 parties over there. And I mean, us being, libertarians, that kind of perked my ear up. So it's like, well, there's 3 parties. At least they've let the 3rd party in. There must be some amount of semblance of sanity over there. So what did they do over there?
Well, in all of these parliamentary systems, there's a lot more than 3 parties. The solution, or sorry, not the solution. What the objective is to form what's called a coalition government. Is you need to be able to have at least a simple majority of the seats to come together and say, yes, we are going to form the government of whatever this parliament is. So you might have 15 different parties, and you might have one party that has 1 seat, and another party that has 20, and another party that has 200, and whatever it takes. But you need a grouping of those parties, of at least 1 or 2 of those parties, a handful of them, to come together and say, okay, we're going to form a coalition government, we're going to establish this parliament, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you have an overwhelming majority of the people that vote for one single party, then that one party can form their own government without having to create a coalition with other parties. So, for example, in France, there are 577 seats in the French National Assembly, and you need 289 of those seats to form this, like I said, this coalition party, this majority in the National Assembly, so you can form a government. And so those 3 parties I mentioned are just the 3 biggest ones. There's a lot of other smaller parties, but no one of those individual parties on the first ballot was able to get to that magic 289 seat number. But the party that got by far the closest was this National Rally Party, Marie Le Pen's party, the party that is allegedly far right, and they're going to take us back to take France back to the Dark Ages, et cetera, et cetera. And on the first round, I forget what her numbers were. It was something like the mid 40s, like 42, 45% of the vote in France. Now, again, when you're in a system with multiple parties, 40+% of the vote is definitely a majority of the country, if you're looking at it in the context of which party is the most popular, broadly speaking, amongst the French people. However, despite getting 40% of the vote on the first ballot, that party, the National Rally Party, actually wound up with like 17 or 18% of the seats in the National Assembly. Now, how does that happen in such a democracy is sacred sort of situation? How does a party that has 40% of the people backing it only wind up with less than half of that percentage in the National Assembly? And how that happens is because the National Rally Party wasn't able to get that, majority, that 289 seats, it went to a second round and a third round of voting. And basically what happened is you had a coalition that formed between Macron's more centralist party, the Together for the Republic centrist coalition, and this far left party, which is called the New Popular Front, which is a leftist coalition. And so although Macron may, as the name suggests, try to be a centrist and not go super far crazy left with some of his policy ideas and stuff like that, he certainly doesn't do the more nationalist, get a handle on immigration and pro-business and lower taxes on, French citizens that the National Rally Party would be for. He certainly doesn't go the whole, far left, tax certain portions of the population up to 90%, which is what this other party did. But what did Macron do? he formed a coalition with that far left party to be able to get the 289 seats to be able to form that government that I was talking about, and to keep the National Rally Party out of power is what he did. Essentially, long story short, he sold his soul to the devil. Because now the question is, how is his party going to be able to govern or legislate in a centralist manner when they have to placate this far leftist party that is, like, again, talking about 90% taxes and, all this other, social, socialist sort of policies and sloganeering and stuff like that. How is he going to govern with that as his comrades?
You know what this reminds me of?
Matter.
All I know is if he pulled that shit in our family's Risk game, it would cease to fucking be. All right. There would be no more Thanksgivings, no more Christmases. We wouldn't even talk anymore. We'd be Selena Gomez. All right. Straight up. Because that's exactly what we did in a game, and it almost tore our family apart.
Yeah.
You don't know how honest I'm being right now. Anyway, but that all sounds like a lot of chicanery, tomfoolery, and dare I say it, hobnobbery over there in France to get those ridiculous numbers. Like, that's such a weird concept too. Like, if you don't win the majority, then we go to a playoff. And if you don't win the playoff, then you can join sides with other people, and you could, like, you shouldn't be able, that's not fair. Like, you don't get to play, like, that would be like if a team was playing a match and they beat one team 2-1, and then they go to the next game and they win that game 3-2. They go, no, you're tied because we just aggregated the scores of all your opponents. So now you're tied. Now you need to play again. That doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you talking about? Can't we just, how do we elect a president? Like, for God's sake.
Well, fair or not, what I will say is it's certainly not democratic. And that's rich coming from like
the
I
French.
said, yeah, definitely from the French. But because again, the same thing's happening to the Vox party in Spain. The same thing happens to AFD in Germany. The same thing happens to, I forget the name of the more, not the Tories, but there's a more right
Labour
party. No, Labour's are left in the UK, but I forget what the more further right of the Tories are.
Shit. Hold on. Keep going.
Well, like there was UKIP, and UKIP was the one that basically got Brexit done, but I don't think that party exists anymore. I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn on the UK in particular. Maybe you'll find it. But the point is that this is happening all over the place, where the populations are starting to trend more and more nationalists. Now, David and I, as good God-fearing libertarians, we understand the problems with nationalism and are not here to sing its praises, only to say that we can understand why the people of those countries are trending in that direction when they have seen their politicians sell out their domestic interests for these international interests that those party leaders in those countries are benefiting from, but the people on the ground in those countries are not benefiting from. It only stands to reason. If you're getting a raw deal, you're going to search out another deal. And if that other deal happens to be a more nationalist party, then, take your medicine, I guess. But to not let that party, kind of legislate on behalf or express the interests of the clear majority of people in that country that are voting for it, is not democratic. And now I can already hear the moans and the groans from our libertarian audiences around the world, or anybody that lives in a country with a parliamentary system, as they're saying, what are you, dumb Americans talking about? You have the Electoral College, right? That is super anti-democratic. And to that we would say, yeah, that's kind of the whole point.
It's the Conservative Party, Dane. The Conservative Party in England is the
That's separate from the Tory Party?
Yeah, it's just the Conservative Party.
Or maybe they're just called the Tories.
According to Wikipedia,
is that the far right party?
Labor group, conservative group, liberal Democrat group, and independent group.
Okay, yeah.
Those are
So the
four
liberal
main-
Democrat might be considered the centrists or
Right.
whatever. Yeah. Okay. So, yes. So, but the point is, those populations in those different countries are trending more towards those type of parties, but they're not getting their interests expressed in policy because this keeps happening. Because these lesser parties, in terms of they're just not getting on a straight playing field. These more leftist and centrist parties are not getting the same number of votes that these more nationalist, more right-leaning parties are getting, but yet they're coalescing because they have enough within themselves to be able to outweigh these nationalist parties. And so anyway, back to the Electoral College point. The United States came to be as a country based on the hard lessons learned of these countries in Europe. That when you have a centralized authority, right? Like I said in the other, when we were talking about the SAVE Act, DC does not legislate for Florida or Kansas or Texas or New York the same way that Paris legislates for all of France or Berlin for all of Germany. And that's by design. Because basically what you had with these liberal democratic Western European nations is once the idea of monarchy kind of fell away, the concept was, well, you still keep the power centralized. You just now put it into a body like Parliament instead of one individual person like a king. Whereas the United States, coming out of those lessons are like, that doesn't really fix anything because then you still have centralized authority. And how is the average individual citizen supposed to push it back against that? And so what the United States is it's a compact between the 50 states. DC only exists because the 50 states allow Washington, D.C. to exist. The 50 states are sovereign. They have their own authority, their own power. And they say, in exchange for entering into this pact with the other 49 states, we are going to collectively agree to delegate some authority to the federal government. And that federal authority is lined out in what we call the U.S. Constitution. If the federal government exceeds that authority or is doing something that is not allowed under that document, then the states can reclaim their power and do whatever they want. Two classic examples of this in recent memory. The legalization of marijuana at the state level. Still, to this day, possession of marijuana is a federal crime. They're trying to reschedule it, but it is currently a Schedule I drug, and you can go to jail for a very long time if the feds arrest you and charge you for it under the federal law. But in California, Colorado, Washington State, states all over the country, they have legalized it. So that basically what those states are saying, we don't give a shit what you say, feds. You don't have the authority to legislate in this area. We do. And so we're going to make it legal. And you're not going to use state resources to arrest state citizens for federal crimes. That's one example. Another example is COVID. I know this one's less popular, but it's popular for the people that are more right-leaning. When DC wanted to hand down all of these edicts from St. Fauci, you had a few holdout states like DeSantis in Florida, Kristi Noem in South Dakota, to a lesser extent, Texas. And they said, no, we're not going to impose these mandates and we're not going to force people to get, a medical procedure and we're not going to do all these things. And that is the states exercising their sovereign authority against the central authority and saying, you don't have that power. In that system is explicitly set up not to be democratic. Because what the founders understood is that if you have 100 people voting on something and one single person objects, allowing that 99 to turn and enact a tyranny on that one is just as bad as a king doing it or a parliament doing it. So yeah, our system is not democratic. And it's intentionally that way because you dipshits over in Europe gave us hundreds of years of really, really shitty precedent showing us why centralized authority and basic popular majority democracy doesn't work. So we can sit over here and object that you are not living up to your own principles because we don't have those principles and we never have, despite what our ignorant politicians and late night talk show hosts say about how sacred democracy is.
Well, it's just weird. It's a whole weird thing that this it seems like, again, the voice of the people is always, it just always seems circumvented no matter what you do nowadays. Like, unless you vote with your dollars. And I've noticed, I don't know if I just kind of want this, seeing as we have an election coming up and it's been prevalent. I feel like there's certain sides to our election, just to bring it back home, Dane, that they're starting to soften their standpoints on a lot of things.
Who?
I think that
the powerful, the ones that are controlling
the left
the shots,
are like starting to bring it back. Like, well, maybe we didn't mean all the people. Maybe we should shut down the border. You know what? We're doing great. We're doing great at shutting down the border. You guys want the border shut down? We haven't listened to you for 3.5 years. We're going to shut the border down now. Don't worry about it. Border shut down. We're doing great with that. Kids, whatever. Yeah, we're going to reinstate, the draft. What is it called? Conscription. We're gonna re-up conscription,
Slavery,
but we're gonna automate it.
Is another word for it.
What's that?
Slavery is another word for it.
Well, I mean, indentured slavery at least. But that's the type of slavery where we can make you go kill somebody else in another country, or else we send you to jail. For some reason, we've had a discussion about what a man is and what the definition of a woman is for the last 3.5 years, but they figured it out. Every man has to conscribe. They did that pretty quick too. So they're like, we kind of figured out the woman thing overnight. Don't worry about that. And now they're kind of like, well, okay, Biden is a little crazy. Biden might not be the way to go. So let's bring it back. Let's try to bring it back. Get on our side. We're good people. We're good people. We're going to fix you. We're going to get you out of those slums, black people. You keep voting for us. And you've stayed there the entire time that we've told you to vote for us, but this is the time. This is the one. We were trying to, but those goddamn Republicans on the other side. We're gonna get you out of there now. You just keep voting for us, okay? Sounds great. Awesome.
Problem for them with that, David, is that
if you've been paying attention, and I've had that conversation. Have you had any conversations with anybody that was shocked about the debate and Biden? Just as we close up here. Have you talked to anybody that was shocked about Biden? You'd be surprised who I have talked to that were very shocked. Oh, they're like MSNBC and CNN. Bless you.
Thank you.
Do that off the mic next time professionally.
I tried. I need to hit the...
I'm kidding. I don't care.
I'm getting better. I got to get better at hitting my mute button.
Well, I'm not hitting my mute button anymore, and we know fucking why for that. But I was just shocked. Like, I remember during our reaction, I was like, nothing changed. Like, those are the two people that we saw all the time leading up to it and all the time back. And then we turned off our live stream. I started watching the reaction or seeing the reaction on social media, and they're like, we've never seen Mr. President like this. Like, yeah, this is shocking. He was really bad tonight. Like, bitch, we've been saying this shit for 3 fucking years. Like, he had the card. They took a picture of it. You could read the fucking thing. You could read what the reporter was going to say. You could read his response, and he read it down the line. Like, he's been stumbling, bumbling, calling the wrong names. America can be summed up by one phrase. That's the...
You know the line.
You know what it is. Forget it. Like, what?
Yeah, if you'll probably remember, but for those of you who didn't tune in to our live stream of the debate, is
shame on you, by the way.
Shame on you. Is I said at the end that I thought Biden won, and the reason why I thought Biden won wasn't because he did anything spectacular, but it's because he didn't fall over. That the bar for him was so low that, despite stumbling and mumbling his words and not putting together a coherent sentence at many parts in the discussion, that I just thought the typical refrain from the media would be like, oh yeah, he really hit that, or they would choose to not focus on what he said and choose to focus more
all
on
the lines that Trump said. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, he stayed on his feet. He seemed to maintain breathing throughout.
He didn't wander off.
Yeah, on those bases, he probably won. But boy, was I wrong. I did not get the mainstream media memo. I'll tell you.
And
that
again,
much.
I don't know what the fuck, what changed. Like, I feel like Coach Green. They are who we thought they were. Like, he is what he's been and what we've been seeing for the past 3.5 years. It's like, and this doesn't go anywhere else. But now, we've been subjugated to like the "It's All Fine" tour by the Biden campaign. Now They keep trotting him out there like he'll make it better this time, and he called Vice President Trump a great potential president. That's why he selected her. You know, Vice President Trump.
This week, Vice President Trump, and then the president of Ukraine, President Putin. Did you see that one?
So close. He was so close. He almost got it right.
Yeah.
He'll get it right next time. But at least Whoopi Goldberg is still on his side and said until she finds for a fact that he can't perform the rites and rituals of that office, then he's still her president. It's like,
okay, Whoopi.
Thanks.
As if anybody gives a shit what you say. As if
Thanks,
all
Whoopi.
5 viewers. They have as many viewers as we do, and we have like not even 1 millionth
that's
of the
fucking
budget.
embarrassing. We ought to know. Anyway.
So listen, Europeans, okay? I say this from a place of love. I think I did in the heat of one of my ramblings just a second ago, I said dipshits or something like that. I apologize. Okay.
We said dipshits lovingly.
Yeah. And I'm talking to, the people in your country that are like the people in our country. So I'm talking to the Rachel Maddows of France and Germany and England and Spain. I'm talking to the what's her name? What's the lady on MSNBC? Joy Reid that we dislike so much.
Well,
I'm talking to those people when I say dumb, because they're the ones that are always like, democracy. And then, when push really comes to shove, when it's time to say, all right, the people have spoken. The
Step
people
down.
want to leave the EU, or the people want to have this more nationalist right-leaning party because our policies suck and they don't want us to lead anymore. Or the people want da-da-da-da-da. They never really live up to those ideals when push comes to shove, do they? No, they don't.
It's almost like democracy doesn't matter.
Kind of like over here in the United States. Again, even though for the long diatribe explanation for what I just explained of why the United States is not a direct democracy, and intentionally so, all of the people on this side of the pond who talk about how sacred democracy is and that if Trump wins, then democracy loses and, the American experiment is over and blah, 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 at every opportunity, whether it's defeating the SAVE Act to provide at least marginally less security and certainty to our elections, or whether it's challenging the legitimacy of election that they happen to be on the losing side of, or any number of other anti-democratic means that they would like to employ in order to get their way, that the one defining feature amongst all of these people that are in power in these various governments around the world is they have it, they're not giving it up without a fight, and every opportunity that they get between now and that fight starting, they're going to make sure that your vote doesn't count. You can express your preferences however you want. You're not getting your way without a fight. And to harken back to our, discussion earlier in the show about the Second Amendment and how the Second Amendment protects all of the other ones, when that fight comes, and it's not a matter of, threat or anything else like that. It's a simple matter of looking at human history in every society and culture that's existed throughout time. Once you have collected power that is so ossified at the top, and you have the vast unwashed masses that are being kept under heel for long enough, it's just a matter of time before the violence breaks out. And when it does, you, the French people, the German people, the English people, Spanish, any country that doesn't have the luxury of a Second Amendment, you're going to wish you did. And,
Well, maybe not the French because they're not very good with them anyway. Hi-oh! Anyway, no, the last thought that I want to kind of throw into this episode is just like, if you think that democracy dies with this election, Joe Biden has been that way for at least 2 years, and everything has been operating pretty much standard operating procedure over here. So if he's not pulling the strings, who is?
Yeah.
Even if you did vote for Biden, your vote didn't matter either because he's not the one running the country right now, clearly. So democracy doesn't die with this vote. It dies in darkness, and darkness is all we've had over here forever. So
it's all he's got going on in his head.
It's just, hello, darkness, my old friend. It's me, Joe Biden, again. Anyway, Dane, with all that being said, where can they find this wonderful episode 202?
Correct. They can find this episode at wmdpodcast.com/202. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. They can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Odyssey. They can link up with us on X, Instagram, TikTok, private members only Facebook page of $5 a month or more of support. They need to join the email list over at wmdpodcast.com to always stay in contact with the show. Just click down below in these videos. Merch, Bitcoin address. There's all kinds of ways that you can support the show, but most importantly, and the one that, I shouldn't say most importantly, they're all important, but the one that we appreciate for, even if you don't have the financial wherewithal to help us out in that way, we appreciate all of the non-monetary ways you help by like, subscribe, share, commenting, or just simply, throwing our name out at family functions before you get cussed out.
Just to really piss off your parents.
Yeah. Just drop a bomb in there and say, hey, listen to this episode, guys, and then leave the room. We thank you for your service, and we appreciate you helping us grow the Sane Space one more subscriber at a time.
Well, that was awesome, Dane. Well done. And to you, memes, we'll see you next week for episode 203, we hope. And until then, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.